Hello, my name is Ilona and today is Friday, February 9th, 2024. I'm later because I just, let's just say, managed to find my bed at 2:30 last night because I was watching the interview between Mr. B and Tucker Carlson, which was very interesting. I also dropped some messages late last night about this. It was just so interesting to see. So that's why I'm later. I am tired. So we'll see how this is going to go. I already recorded my Dutch video and did my card reads, shuffled the cards in that video if you want to see that. But there are two things I want to take a look at, and that is Mr. B and, of course, the interview with Mr. P and Tucker Carlson. It's very interesting to see. So first, of course, Mr. B, because, well, apparently they needed something to counter effect or, counter what was happening with the interview with Tucker Carlson and Mr. P. They needed to some distraction, so they thought, you know what, we're going to go full out. And apparently the report, the special report about the these confidential papers that Mr. B was keeping in his garage, came out that they're not going to do anything about it because Mr. B is a very, very confused man. Doesn't remember anymore when he was vice president, and he didn't even remember the death of his son in 2015, which is very sad, but they actually came out with that. I also saw an article yesterday, I believe, here in the Dutch media about him confusing people. He was confusing Angela Merkel with Helmut Kohl. And he was also saying that he recently met the president of, I think he said president, if I'm not mistaken. I just have to see. Yeah, he recently met with Mitterrand from Germany. Well, Mitterrand was the French president between 1981 and 1995. And he also died in 1996. So that should tell you something. Probably was talking about the French president now, Macron. Very, very confusing. And of course, I saw a clip after he was, because he responded to what came out about him, that he is very confused, that there was nothing wrong with his memory. And apparently they also got to ask him some questions. And I saw a clip and I, to be honest, didn't even understand it at first. He was talking about calling the President Sisi from Mexico because humanitarian help needed to be provided in the Gaza area. So he needed to open that up. And I was just like, Mexico? First I didn't understand it, and then I realized that the president of Egypt, his name is Al-Sisi. So that's what he was talking about. And you actually see credible reactions responding to that. Even a new map with the Gaza area and then Mexico next to it. Source Mr. B. It's just the person that is actually, doing these things as Mr. B really needs a raise, because it's just in a way, to me, this feels like this is purposely done. It's also to counter, the interview with Mr. P, get them talking about Mr. B. And I do think that Mr. B is going to leave the stage pretty soon. And there's also a chance that, of course, he's going to be replaced with a wife. Well, I'll use the term loosely, from a former president, Mr. O, and his so-called wife. Most likely is going to be pushed in the front. We don't know about that, but we'll have to wait and see. But we do know that with Mr. B, it's kind of ending. But it's just, the cards I've got was the Fool card. We've got the Knight of Pentacles as the central card. We've got the High Priestess in the past. We've got the Sun card underneath the Knight of Pentacles. And we have the 10 of Pentacles and the 7 of Swords for the future. And I was looking at the back of the deck, was drawn to it, and it had the Emperor. So to me, this feels like this is the military behind it. This is a plan being rolled out. I think the dark energies want to get rid, of course, of Mr. B, but also the white hats are using Mr. B, of course, to make it as ridiculous as possible. This is like a new energy coming in. It's opening up things, but I think in the future we're going to see someone replacing him. Mr. B will be replaced, And that will seem like a solid candidate. Most likely Mrs. O, like I said, use it term loosely, but at least the public will see her as Mrs. O. So we'll have to see Michelle. Most likely, we'll have to wait and see. But they're trying to get away with it. They try to come up with someone that still has like this status in America. Obviously, a lot of people are still not completely aware of what's been going on, of course, with Mr. O and his wife and all the things happening. That needs to come out as well. And I believe that is part of the plan. Soon as she is going to be pushed in the forefront or someone else. But I have a feeling it's most likely going to be her term. Loosely, I use it loosely. And of course we have the Sun card. This has to do with children. So I believe that that has to come out as well. So this is just a new, necessary to bring in, new things, opening people's minds. So I think that most likely this is like the end of that. Because let's face it, a lot of Americans are really like, so they're not going to do anything about him, about these confidential papers, because he's too confused. He doesn't remember anything, but they'll let him be president. And of course, for, the average American, the president has access to certain weapons. I don't think he has access to it. I think this is like one big show in a way, but I don't think he has access to it. But, the average American believes he does. He is the president, so he can push buttons, especially when he's a confused old man. You don't want him in that position. So I do believe that they're going to pull the plug on him. Someone else is going to be pushed to the forefront, and it's all part of the plan. That's how I see it. Very interesting to see. The second thing, of course, I want to take a look at is the interview with Mr. P and what kind of, what's the energy around that, surrounding that. So many things are coming out. I also shared a message from Biocladiston that actually shared some thoughts about the interview that, Mr. P knows way too much history. And that's really interesting because the first part, he's really giving a history lesson about the areas of Ukraine, where it's, what's happening there. He goes way back. He also goes to 1654. He's really, you see Tucker Carlson looking at him like, where is this going? Even asking like, what's the relevance of this? And Mr. P is like, wait, just wait. And then he actually tells the history behind it. So he knows a lot of history. Mr. P is operating on an intellectual plane far above all US politicians. Mr. P appears to want cooperation, but the West has isolated Russia. This is the message from Biocladiston. And that's, you can really, he's really telling and talking about the, the Soviet Union falling apart in 1991, and they were open to, start cooperation. But they were pushed to the side. They were isolated. And he really talks about that. He also talks about, the certain group in Ukraine working there. And I kind of have to figure out a name. In the Netherlands, we have like this vegetable that rhymes with the name of the group of people from 1933 till 1945 in Germany. But I can't come up with something here now, but he's talking about that regime has continued there. He even mentions, of course, the man in the Canadian Parliament who actually received a standing ovation from Mr. Castro, and of course Mr. Z, the president of Ukraine, who was there as well, who turns out to have fought against Russia. And of course, who has fought against Russia in the Second World War? Yes, that group of that was part of the German party that you really don't want to have around. And he's talking about Mr. P, that he really wants to make sure that regime is not going to go anywhere. And that is actually what he's clearing up in Ukraine. So he's opening that one up. Biocladiston also mentions that this is more of an, how do you say, he was saying this very nicely, like Obviously that he wanted Mr. P to talk about the biolabs and things like that, but this topic might be too far for a jump down the rabbit hole for those new to this realm. This interview seemed to be an introductory first impression to appeal to Western citizens and disprove the mainstream media created perception of Mr. P. And I believe that's exactly what's been going on, because he comes across as very reasonable. He tried to create peace there, and apparently they were all in Istanbul almost ready to sign, but then Boris Johnson, at that moment in time from Great Britain, came up and told Ukraine to just continue fighting against Russia. Most likely backed by people from America, certain, of course, groups there, and also a certain agency from America, because Mr. P also mentioned that agency that is still trying to gain control in that area, and the agency starts with a C, they've got an I, and they have an A. So he mentions that. It's really very interesting to see all the things he mentions, and I do believe that this is very important for people to see around the world, to that entire image that the mainstream media has. And of course they're going to twist and turn this, trying to confuse people, but I believe it's very easy to see that he really just wants peace. He has no interest of fighting in any way. So this is interesting, just to, I think a lot of people's minds will be changed about that. But I'm going to take a look, of course, in my card reading, what I've got for the energies. Let's see if I've mentioned everything. He also talks about, Tucker also asks about, these two groups in the world standing against, each other. And Mr. P actually sees this as two parts of the brain that actually need to work together instead of fighting each other. He also mentions AI and Elon Musk, that people need to get together to stand up against this and make rules about this. The last part I thought was very interesting. I actually read it in Dutch in my Dutch video, but it's really about, he's mentioning an example of in Ukraine. They were surrounded by Russian soldiers, and the Russian soldiers were like, give up, you'll live. And then the Ukraine soldiers actually responded in Russian, perfect Russian, "We are Russians, we will not surrender." So they unfortunately died. So you really have like a civil war essentially. And that's why he also mentioned this entire history, to understand how this situation, how it started and how it actually is at this moment in time, and that a lot of Russian people identifying as Russians living in that area and actually fighting against each other. It's really sad to see. He also mentions all the different religions in the areas, and they are fine to live together. There is no issue because a lot of values are quite the same actually. So also mentions that. And the last thing is, he talks about why the Ukraine are trying to get rid of this Orthodox church there, because it unites the souls. And what was the exact word that he mentioned there? And no one can really are capable of separating the soul. That's actually the ending of the interview, and I thought that was very, very interesting. So the cards I've got, again, was very interesting. First of all, the Knight of Pentacles. This is all part of a plan. It feels like that as well. We've got the High Priest as the central card. We've got the Eight of Cups in the past. We've got the Ten of Pentacles underneath the High Priest. And we have the Death card and the Queen of Cups for the future. So this is all to show this, really, what the mainstream media, the picture that they've painted of Mr. P, that it's completely untrue, and it's really shining a light on that. I think it's really showing what's been going on in that area, all the influences, that Russia really wants peace. He also mentions that in the end, like it's up to the other party to really, we've tried many times. They've made this mess, they've created it, so they need to step it up and come up with something, because it should have ended a long time ago. And that he has no interest in invading other countries or things like that. So this is really showing people what's really been going on. That the picture that's been painted by the media, by of course all the elites and all the politicians in other countries, And, you know, a lot of countries, I do think things have already changed quite a bit, but the picture that's been painting of Mr. P is not correct. They're changing it now. It's falling apart. So this is about, you know, letting the old go, bringing in the new, and it will lead to more connection. Because I do believe that what Mr. P was trying to say also with these two parts of the brain that need to work together, that need to cooperate, that is what we want as humanity, to cooperate, to see that we are all human and we need to connect. And so I think this is all part of showing people. And of course, there's going to be people that will see him as manipulating, that will try to hold on to that old way of thinking. But it's really showing all these influences, all these dark energy influences. The regime, you know, with these neo, you know, group of people that are in Ukraine that he's mentioning, and that's really what he wants to get rid of. All the influences there. It's very, very interesting, and I do believe a lot of people's minds will be changed, and seeing that Mr. P really is not this monster they've been trying to portray, they've tried to show with that picture on the outside. So I do think this is very interesting to see. I think this the old will fall apart. It's already happening. That's the death card, and it will unite people. It will lead to more connection and uniting people, and I think that's the most important thing. So I do think the energy from this interview will be very important in changing people's minds. I'd like to leave it at this. Hope to see you in another video. Bye.